Hi, I'm Mindy Stearns.
And I'm Glenn Stearns.
And this is Grit Happens. On this show, we engage in candid conversations with some of the most successful people in every field and from every walk of life.
All with the common thread of grit and the common goal of not just surviving, but
Thriving. And we hope this show helps you feel informed, energized, and
especially inspired. So let's get started.
This is
Grit Happens.
And here we are with another episode of Grit Happens. It's so good to be back in studio. We continue our series on integrity, the launch of Glenn's book, and some of the wonderful characters throughout his lives that have been a big impact. And some are even in the story. Some have even endorsed the story. And today we have someone really needs no introduction, John. I mean, if they don't know who you are, they've been living under a rock. But our dear friend and superhero in the sports world, Mr. John Elway.
How you doing, buddy?
Yeah. I haven't heard that kind of intro in a long time. I kind of like it.
I know, huh? Come on, doesn't your wife do that every day when you get ready to bed?
I know Glenn would love me to introduce him.
Yeah, I can't wait to get me there.
That's right. That's Mindy. Here he comes out of the bathroom, coming in.
Outlier, underdog, and
I'm
doctor. He's getting another doctor to his name.
Exactly. Now, I don't know about you, but my wife, she does what we call the slow play, right?
Oh, yeah.
You get in bed, they get out there, they're taking off their makeup, and they're just waiting to hope you fall asliep.
Well, that takes me about 8 minutes, and so that's usually she shows up. I don't know how she must have it timed pretty well because I don't have to remember when she comes to bed.
Are you saying, boy?
They've learned that very well. Anyway, we digress.
Yes.
So, hey, obviously and honestly, I appreciate you for many things. Our friendship, number one, but for I did that little show and had a lot of positive feedback. I was absolutely flattered by it. And so they said, write the book. So I kind of,
3 years, well, actually 40 years, people have been telling me he's had so many stories over the years. And I'm sure you've heard almost all of them. They're in the book. There might be a couple there of you where you guys have had some fun together. You guys had a lot of wisdom, a lot of late nights, a lot of finals where you guys had a lot of great philosophical talks about life in the world. And
But to your point, I mean, to that point is, when you boil it down and you start to think what's important in your life, and then you want to put it down. In my case, it's more about, I say it kind of like leading with my flaws, meaning, I'm not perfect, and I like people maybe that are out there to realize, man, you want to achieve something in life. I don't know anybody that just got it all going on and it just happens. It doesn't happen that way. It's hard freaking work, man.
It is hard, and I don't think people realize how hard it is. And plus, in that, they just see the positives and everything that's happened good, rather than all the down times that you had too, right? Because to enjoy the good times, you have to have some down times. There's a lot of down times going through that, and that's why it's. Life's a heck of a battle. No matter what you do, it's a heck of a battle. And there's ups and downs with everything. You just hope that you have more ups than you do downs, but you have to be able to pick yourself up and, wipe yourself off and say, listen, we're going to go back at this again. Obviously in the world of sports, we're tested week to week. And so, 1 week you go out and have a great game, and the next week you struggle a little bit and don't play nearly as well. So, that football is, one game a week, and each game is so important. So those ups and downs and, overall, I think is where you kind of look at the big picture and say, okay, was it successful or not as a season, as a career, as a life? You look at the big picture. But in that picture, as you said, Glenn, as you've experienced too, is that there's a tremendous amount of ups, but there's also a tremendous amount of downs. And it's the ones that can pick themselves up during the down periods that can continue to come back and be successful.
Exactly. I think about your career and you look at, let's not go week to week. Let's look at a career, right? You rang the bell, so to speak, I always say it's not how you start, it's how you finish, but you won the last 2 Super Bowls of your career and off you went in the sunset. But what you got to remember is you you
Lost a
lost the
few.
first 3 that you went to, right? And people, the younger people don't realize, hey, John Elway won the last 2 Super Bowls. No, but how'd it feel to lose 3 in a row, right?
Right.
That's the pain.
And that's the thing is, those were early in my career. I went to my first Super Bowl in my 4th year, and so my fourth,
Wow.
fifth, and 7th year. So we went to Super Bowl 3 out of 4 years, and really the first time we played the Giants in Pasadena, and we were ahead at halftime, 10-9. We had made the longest field goal in Super Bowl history. Then we missed the shortest field goal in Super Bowl history. Right before halftime, we had first goal on the 1-yard line and didn't get any points out of it. So went in that one at 10-9 at halftime, and then the Giants got really hot. Phil Simms was like 19 out of 22 for the game, was the MVP of the game, and really played well that second half. And we ended up getting beat 39-20 in that one. Then the next year,
Not that you
we
remember.
we were playing the Redskins, and we're up 10-0 after the first quarter.
Doug Williams.
And then 19 plays later, we were down 35-10. So, that was very disappointing. We missed a year, and then 1989, we went against the 49ers, and they really had a great football team. And so they were much better than us, and we got beat 55-10, and that was 1989. And so,
Ouch.
you talk about as great as the Super Bowl wins are, there's not a more disappointing loss, because once, there's 2 teams left, and when you're in the Super Bowl and the winners are the world champs, and the other, the loser kind of just goes back with the rest of everybody.
But everyone
right.
forgets how many wins they got to get there. So,
And-
it's like it's so quickly you're defined by a loss, but it's
Yes.
also paving the way towards the celebration of a great success to come. And I think those losses are learns.
Yep.
The losses are
Yeah.
learned.
And I say this all the time, is Joe Montana won 4 Super Bowls, never lost one. And I said, well, he doesn't appreciate those 2 wins that I had nearly as much as I do, just because of the fact that he never lost one and never felt how painful those losses are. So, and then after that 3rd Super Bowl, it was 8 years before we went back. And so, and then finally in my 15th year and 16th year, we got back there and we're able to win it. We went into the Super Bowl 32, which is my 15th year, the first one we won, and we were 14-point underdogs to the Packers.
Right.
And they were the defending champs and had won it the year before. So, heavy underdogs. And it was funny. I remember calling my mom after we had beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, and we were on the airplane, and I called my mom and I said, hey, Mom, we get a chance to go back to the Super Bowl. And there's like a long pause. And she goes, do we really have to go back to the Super Bowl? But, Terrell Davis had a great game. We were able to run the football. They were a really good football team, but we ran the football. We were able to get over the hump and win that game. And it was, there was, other than my kids being born, there wasn't a single moment in my life that I was more happy and really a feeling of accomplishment to be able to, after 15 years, to get over that hump, because there's a lot of talk after those first 3 Super Bowls that we'd never get back, and Elway can't win the big game, and da. So you have to you fight all that negative press throughout the whole way, but we were able to keep our nose down and keep focused on what the goal was, and that was to win a world championship. And thank God we were able to get it done twice.
When I think about that game, it was what was the saying? Like win this for John, or I forget.
This one's for John.
This one's for John.
This one's for John after we'd won it. Yeah, our owner said that, which was a great feeling.
Yeah, and you think about how revered you were, and
still are.
And I still are, but my point is, it's not about giving you a big head. And you and I've spent a lot of time on this. It's about it feels good to have that kind of respect, and it's earned, right? It's not given.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were very good to people and fair and level-headed, and we've talked about different things, and I asked you before when we've been just alone and sitting there talking.
Finals.
And I wasn't bringing that up, but yeah. And but how I'd say, you've been sacked 4 or 5 times in a row, and like, what do you do in the huddle, right? Like, what do you say to these guys to fire them up? Are you yelling at them, or what are you doing? Why don't you give the answer to what you
Well,
do?
yeah, and Thursday nights was our night out with the offensive line every week, and so I take them out every Thursday, so I was able to spend some quality time with those guys. But I was not a screamer and a holler and a yeller. I was just a competitor, and I knew that every time we got on the field, everybody was doing the best they can. But when we got off to a tough start, and I got hit maybe 5 or 6 times in the first couple of series, and dropped backs and sacked a couple of times, and we'd have a TV timeout, and I just get in there, and instead of hollering and screaming, I'd just say, okay, are you guys mad at me? If you guys are mad at me, please tell me why you're mad at me. And I promise you, I will apologize, because if I offended you guys in any way, I did not mean to do that. So if you are mad at me, just tell me right now, because we got to figure out a way to keep me upright so I can get the ball downfield a little bit.
And you know what? And that's a true, honest sign of leadership, right? Because they already know that they let you down. You don't have to tell them. Right. They know, they feel bad enough. And so by you kind of putting
Using
some
a little
levity
humor,
and a little humor, they say, wow, this guy, we like him. We want to defend him more. You know what I mean? You don't have to say anything. You knew it.
Yeah. And relationships are so important. I think those are the most important thing. And, leadership comes in so many different forms, right? Everybody has their own way to lead and how they get the respect. But ultimately, a leader does get that respect. And when somebody does talk, and how you talk to them and you talk with respect, I think you get the respect back, and they understand that. Now, different guys, take coaching different ways and hear different things and learn different ways. But for the most part, and it was my philosophy that, I'm going to be their friend. And I kind of did it by how I worked. And so I did it by example. And to me, that was the most important thing, is I didn't ever want them, because everybody always puts the quarterback on a pedestal. So I was fighting my whole life to get off that pedestal and let them know I'm just a cog in the machine, and everybody has their job to do in the machine, especially in the game of football, when you have to have 11 guys going the same direction, that I was just a cog in that machine, and that I was not any more important than anybody else on that football team. And so I did that by how I worked in the off season, how I worked in the weight room, how I worked on the practice field. And so that set that, for me, it set that example, to whereas if I would gain that respect, because I had to do more than anybody else did. And if I didn't, I never took the shortcuts and never wanted to, anything given to me. So that, to me, is how you can lead, is get the respect of the people around you, knowing that you're working just as hard as they are.
John, I have a question on that note. You talk about being a leader. Is there a leader in your life who left a significant impact of how they led, that you followed an example, or who are the greatest leaders you've had that you feel impacted your life in the most significant way?
I mean, I think the one thing that I had with my parents, I mean, both my mom and dad were, they were both my idols, and they were great parents. I loved them both. My dad was a football coach, and so therefore, obviously, and as a football coach, they're not around a lot, because they're working and spend a lot of time in the office and the film room and those type of things. So he was gone a lot when I was younger. And so I knew the way that, for me to get his attention was to be pretty good in sports. And I plus I loved it. And I loved to compete. So, number one was my dad. And if I made him proud of me, that's all that I needed. I didn't really care what anybody else said. And when I was in high school, on Friday nights, everybody after the football games would go to the Shakey's Pizza Parlor, and I'd go home and download with my dad for about a half hour before, after the games, that he could come see, and then I'd go to the Shakey's Pizza Parlor after that. Yeah. But he was a guy that was always, my idol, guy I looked up to, and how he was the one that molded me into the player that I was, and so he'd be the number one guy. As far as a quarterback, my favorite was Roger Staubach. I liked the way that he played the game, and I liked the fact that, he was a military guy that had come out of military, got a late start because of his commitment to the Naval Academy. And I think he started his career when he was 28 years old, and, was a guy that moved around. And my style of play was probably like his, or, moved around quite a bit, made some big plays outside the pocket. So, and plus the way he lived his life off the field, and the role model he was off the field. So those are the two guys that were probably the biggest influence. Now, my mom doesn't get enough credit, because she was the one that was taking me to practice all the time.
Yeah, go
had
Mom.
the good meals on the table all the time, and was at all the football, all my games, all my any sport, baseball. I played baseball also. So she was always the one that was there support when my dad couldn't be. So there, I was very, very lucky to have two great, role models as parents.
When I think of why we're friends, it's a lot to do with, it's not about your career, it's the way you live your life. And I've always looked up to you because you have been very consistent in on and off, right? You're a very humble person for someone who has
And such great success.
had great success. And I'm attracted to people that have great success. And I don't mean it, in any.
Glenn never knew anything about football.
None, but
so
you know that I don't know much.
I like to remind
But I
you.
like people that will try their best at whatever it is, right?
Right.
And do their best. And so in thinking about, again, you could be the best shoe shine guy. I want to know why you do it and how you do it, right? And so, and it's not, again, about, having being the best athlete. It was, the what you did again in your community, back to the part on and off the field, and how people have looked up to you and how you've handled your life in certain ways. And so and your consistency, right? You were in Denver, you stayed in Denver the whole time. You didn't go for they'll trade for this much more money. You figured it out, right? It's communication. And so there's so many little things that meant that I look and I admire in you in that. And then you've gone on to do very similar great successful things in your auto clubs or
Dealerships, yeah.
dealerships, thank you.
Yeah.
And other things like that, and you look at it and you go, okay, and you're happy. There's one story that I love that I tell a lot, and I believe maybe it's in here, I don't remember, but is when you said you were playing golf.
No, you're gonna tell the story.
Like, I love it
Always.
because it tells how humble the guy is.
I know.
You're sitting there playing golf with Vice President Dan Quayle, and he's a little frustrated because you guys are both scratch golfers, but these other guys are either beating you at the point or doing something. And you walk over to Dan, and what do you tell him?
Yeah. I'm forgetting this one, Glenn. I can't remember this one. You tell me this one. I can't. I've been
Okay, I'll tell you.
Wasn't it he was saying
time.
everybody wants to see the president, vice
Yes,
president?
it happened to you, and right when it happened, I think you told me about it, and you said, "Yeah, Dan is frustrated, and he's kind of mumbling under his breath, and he's, and you walk over, you say, I put my arm around him. I said, what's wrong, Dan?" And Dan says, everybody wants to say they beat the vice president at golf. And you reach over, you got your arm around him, you said, Dan, let's face it, we're both has-beens. I mean,
That's right.
Yeah, and it's like, make fun of it. Come on, man. Every dog has his day, and you're never going to be on top forever, right?
You're never. And and the thing is, you're right. When you are on that pedestal, people do want to beat you. And I felt that throughout my, playing golf, and when you play, because they want to run home and tell their friends that they beat you. And so, I mean, that brings out the competitive side of everybody, especially because to me, you have to be, if you're not competitive, it's very difficult to be real successful, because that's what drives you to be successful and be the best, whatever you do, is the competitive nature. And obviously to be a president of the United States, you have to be awful competitive to get to that level in politics. And what he did. And like you did say, we are getting older. And you know what? We're not going to win every time, and especially in golf, because the harder you try in golf, the worse it gets.
Oh, the worse you get, the harder.
The worse you get. But I'd say this, Glenn, is the thing is, when we talk about people and personalities, and people put athletes and celebrities, and they put them on a pedestal. And like I've said, I've worked my whole life trying to get off that pedestal, to have people realize that, what, just because what I do is on TV and everybody else, sees you on TV, that they put you on that pedestal. But ultimately, in everybody's life, no matter what you do, whether it's a mortgage business, Glenn, like you've been so successful at, and all your other entrepreneurial things that you've done, is that you worked your tail off to get there, and you're just great at what you do. And that doesn't make me any better than anybody else. It just makes me good at what I do. And I think that's the thing that I've always had as a mindset, is that, you know what, I respect, as you said, I respect anybody that is great at what they do, no matter what that is.
Exactly.
And not necessarily do they have to be great at it, but if they work hard at it and they're focused on what they do, and it's a goal of them to, for me as a guy and as a father, is to be able to support your family. That's the number one thing that we all do in our lives, is be able to support our families. And it's funny, I'll digress a little bit. And I was asking my dad one time, and my mom was mad at him because he didn't come home, and he was this, and this was probably when I was 35, 40 years old. I think it was right after I retired. And I said, Dad, why don't you ever just come home? And first of all, he said, why don't you call? He goes, John, he says, I tried that. He said, so I decided I was just going to get in trouble once, and that's when I got home. But number two, he says, John, he says, I want you to realize this, and this is not something that, don't take it literally. He says, but my job was number one, and my family was number two. I said, well, why is that? He says, because John, he says, because if I didn't have a job, I wouldn't be able to take care of my family. And that's why I had to commit to my job, so I could support my family. And that's why I had to make that commitment as a priority, that I had to have a job. And as you know, football coaches get fired all the time. And so it was so important for him to do the best job that he could to make a living, to be able to support the family. And so, because you'll always say, well, family's number one. Yeah, naturally it is.
Right.
But that's
In
why
your
your
heart.
job has to be number one, too. And they're really one or 1A, because if you don't have a job, then you really can't take care of your main priority, and that's your family.
Yep.
That goes back. I just want to digress on just on another note, and that boils down to a character, something having character and commitment. And there's lies on a lot of the shoulders of a lot of men and women that do have to put their jobs so they can support their family. It's very hard to live without income. And
I want to touch on that, because you talk about the character and and your family, and what you had something very similar happen to you that happened to me, and that is, you are a big presence in the world of sports. I did fairly well in the world of business, and both in my community, your community. And what happened to me, very similar to you, was I had a talk with my son, and he came to me one day, and we were talking about something. And he said, do you understand how hard it is to live in your shadow? And there's a lot of people that you and I both know that have had some children that are have struggled living in their parents' shadow, their dad or mom's shadow or whatever. And you had a very healthy kind of look at that, as I feel I did as well, where I sat with my son. I said, listen, I don't want you to go on and have to run a mortgage company and be the best at that. I've never once asked you that. I want you to be happy. Let's look at that. You could be the best teacher. You could be whatever you want to be. But if I ever said I'd be disappointed if you didn't run my company. And I remember when your son was put on the front page of the Colorado newspaper for being in the university there in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
And I remember your statement, because I think I'd spent the night that night, and you were very frustrated. Like, why do they want to put that pressure on him? You weren't out there going, yay, look at this. You're saying, it's unnecessary, right? And
And unfortunately, that people look at that too. And I think my son, he played football, and he was a pretty good football player. And when, as you said, went to Arizona State on a football scholarship. But I think, on an 18, 19-year-old kid, that's a heck of a lot of pressure that you have, because they know who the dad is. And I really never understood that, because I never had that. But I think as I got older, I understood that a little bit. And and my son's now 33 years old, and he says today, tells me all the time, he says, Dad, I wish I was just a little bit more grown up at that time. But at 18, it's hard to be that grown up to be able to understand that situation. So, it's unfortunate that society puts that pressure on siblings. And then sometimes the siblings feel it, and there's no doubt they feel it, the kids feel it. So it's an unfortunate situation, and it's hard, but you're right in the fact that I just want my kids to be happy and be successful and do what they enjoy doing and enjoy their life. And I'm very fortunate. I've got 4 beautiful kids, and they're all 4 married with beautiful mates. And so, it's that to me is as much a source of pride as anything I've ever did on the football field.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something real quick, because you guys are friends for a reason. You've attracted one another, and you have similar mindsets. And the book is called Integrity, and grit is at the center of integrity. And I'd love to know, in your words, and when you look at Glenn and see what you admire about him and what he admires about you, in your mind, what is the definition for you of integrity? What does that mean when someone possesses it? And can they have just a little bit, or is it all or none? What's your
I think integrity comes with trust. If you have integrity, people will trust you, and they'll believe in what you say, and they'll believe in what you do. And I think that and it's great. I've never realized that grit's in the middle of the word integrity. That's what I love about the title, is the fact that that's highlighted there, because it does take grit to be successful, and you have to be able to fight through the negative things that we've talked about, because there's ups and downs. But integrity is something that to be successful, especially in the business world, Glenn, like you are, as well as football, with players your teammates have to trust you, and they have to believe in what you're telling them is the truth. And that also leads into the leadership piece of it too. So integrity is the basis, in my opinion, of any person that's been successful in what they've done, because obviously you never get there by yourself. You have so many pieces to the puzzle, and there's so many people that help you get there. And, you hope you raise all boats on the way there, that everybody else is able to have the success that you have too, as a leader in a company or leader on a football team, whatever it may be, that you have that basis to where they can look at you and they believe in what you say. And that's how you get the best out of them. And then you also have you're giving them the opportunity to be the best that they can be. And I think that's all, you as a leader can do, and is provide the people that work for you, your employees that work there, but also make them a piece of that, and thrilled that they're there and want to come to work every day.
When you cut corners, when you don't keep your word, when you think more about yourself than others, and you treat others in a way that, you use them to get ahead, you build the shakiest foundation you could ever build in any kind of, and people, you can mask it, you can do whatever you think you're doing to be clever, and it will come back. And when the time that you need people, they will not be there. But when you care more about other people, and you understand that your word is your bond, and that you also live a life that you're not just thinking, when you're a generous human being, and then the world shakes, because it always does, right? People are there to catch you. And again, I don't mean they're going to write a check for you, right? They're just there to have a shoulder, or listen, or give you some advice, right? It's not, it's not like, hey, I want to be there so then I can use this person later on. No, that's the complete opposite. And people can see through it. When you're authentic and you truly care, then the
Very much
world
so.
seems to work out, because we all go through the ups and the downs, no matter what. And by the way, it doesn't mean business. It can mean relationships. It can mean so many different things, because we need people in our dark times, and nobody gets out of it without having some dark times. And when that comes, when you've planted seeds, they're either seeds where people surround you, or people just watch you fall,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's life,
Glenn, and that's, that's what I admire so much about you, is the fact of what you've done in your business career. But even more importantly is the relationships that you've created. I think that, we come from different backgrounds. We come from different businesses. And, the relationship that we've had has been, I have better conversations with you than I've ever had with anybody else, because we come from such different backgrounds that we have so much to talk about. A lot of times when you're around football players all the time and you don't have any different stories or anything or to talk about. Obviously their background, which, the closer you are to them, the more you know about them. But I think that, your background and what you've done, what you fought through your whole life and the things that you've been through to be able to get to where you are is tremendous. And that's why I think the reason why I'm so, connected with you as well as, respect you so much is because of the fact of and the breadth of knowledge that you have. And it's really in people. And, obviously building the businesses that you've built, you've got great people that have worked for you and they're still with you. And I think that is a true tale of, what you're all about. And, I always say this too, is that, when the time comes and, we're all going to leave this earth, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, the most important thing is when we leave is, not necessarily what we did, but the relationships we had while we're here, because that's what people are going to remember. They're not going to remember how much money you had. They may remember, you won a couple of Super Bowls and you ran Stearns and now you're a new company and kind that they'll remember that. But what they'll talk about is they're going to talk about what type of person you were. And that to me is the most important legacies that you can leave, is that people actually enjoyed being around you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely appreciate that. That's why you're one of my closest friends, John. I respect you equally for that. You were up for an award. What was the name of that? The one that's in
Carousel
LA
of Hope? Carousel of Hope?
Carousel of Hope ball. And there was all these famous celebrities, and you know them all as well. And you had asked me and Mindy to present that to you at this big, huge ball. And I was very touched by that because it showed me your character, because all these people at this big little ball, they don't know who Mindy and I are. And you could have picked some big celebrity to kind of endorse, look at who I am because I know this big celebrity, right? But that wasn't what you were about. You said, I want my friend to do it, and it touched me again, because it showed the depth of what you're about, as I, you had your daughter talk to you, induct you into the Hall of Fame. You didn't have some big football guy, right? And so it shows your character. And, those things are, again, when you take a big step back and you really look at exactly what you're saying. And I hope people at home get this, that life is about relationships. It's not about look at me and look at,
my stuff.
this stuff. It's look at the depth of the people I'm surrounded with. Right.
Right.
And
that's
it.
That's right. And how many friends do you have? And, how many close friends do you have? Obviously it's a busy world and it's really hard to share too much time with too many people, but it's like, for instance, 2 days ago, I had my high school receiver out here and we played 2 rounds of golf. And so, those type things I haven't lost. I went to LA this week. My high school baseball coach went into the LA City CIF Hall of Fame. And so went out there to his Hall of Fame, which was great. It was overdue. And he was, obviously when you talk about that level, high school coaches have what an impact they have on one's life, and he had a huge impact. But those are the type of things that are the most important thing to me. Yeah, granted, fame is good. Fame is not nearly what everybody thinks it is.
No,
it's not, as you know, and so it can be very flighting and can be very shallow. And I think that having experienced that's why I really look at depth in relationships and really getting to know people and people that you can trust. And again, goes back to the same thing in the name of the book, that have integrity.
So I'll touch on 3 famous things and bring it and tie it back into what you just said. You are known for 3 famous plays, right? When you were in college, Stanford, the band play.
The Drive? Was that
No.
No.
The band.
Oh, the band.
The band ran on the
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And then the Drive, of course, right?
Yeah.
And then the
helicopter.
The helicopter. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, let's face it, right? In any sport, if you can, look at Franco Harris, right? Immaculate reception. He's got 1. You got 3, man. That's pretty damn good. And
2 good, 1 bad. 2 good, 1 bad. That was
true. But still, when you look at that in a career, and I remember when there was a gentleman that made that bronze statue of the helicopter, and you had it at your bar, and you were telling the story about what happened and how you were there and you're 2-inch vertical and all, the whole story behind the helicopter. And then you said, Glenn, I want to give you this bronze. That touched me so much. I have that in my office. It's a very important part of my life. And I really, again, it speaks to our friendship, and it means a very, very lot to me.
Well, you've been so great to us, and I'm lucky to have friends like you two. That's for darn sure. I mean, it's this life is, it's been great. I always say this too. And here's the other thing about life is, I look at it and, I'm a believer in God and Jesus and everything. And, whether there's reincarnation or not, who knows? But I know my philosophy is, even if there is reincarnation, there is zero chance my life's going to be nearly as good the next time I come back around. So I'm going to get the most out of this one.
That's right.
Well, I could be a dog. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Just lay around and
So-
scratch your belly all
With
day
the
long.
right family, right?
Right,
I'd
right.
like to be a dog in your family, Mindy.
Yeah.
If I could come back, that'd be good.
Yeah. So
Really
I
good.
think of the people that listen to this show, and it's usually a lot of people that are listening because they want to get some inspiration, hopefully on leadership or on growing a business or on going through life. It doesn't have to be about that. And the stories, right? They're what the common thread again is that when you're kind, when you
Fair.
care, when you're fair, when you're not trying to have a win-lose, when you understand that that people are more important than profits or your own, getting ahead, that life tends to then treat you pretty good. And
It
if
really
you
does.
do it right, you have less of the lows and more of the highs, but you have the lows, but there are people there for you at that time. And so I hope people get that out of what you and I are talking about here.
John, you were so generous to provide a quote for Glenn's book, which I'll just read it real quick and you can elaborate upon it. Glenn possesses the tenacity and drive of the greatest athletes I've ever encountered. He's taken some of the hardest hits life has dealt and always stays in the game. That's your little buddy.
I know. And you know what? And Mindy, you know this as well as anybody, but he really has. And Glenn, that's where, I admire you so much. I mean, the different stories that you've told me, especially back in 08 and 09, when it seemed like the whole world was blown up for you. And the things that, when you were talking about that and the things that you did when, you were trying to be one of the lenders for certain people and you had to go and say, don't drop me. And then, you were the guy that got on the airplane, went downstairs, even though they told you, we can't get a meeting and, they don't have time. We're going to go a different direction. But you, got on an airplane and got there and went in that building and sat down there until they would meet with you. And, you came out of that thing with shining colors. And so, I mean, those are the little things that I think make people successful like you are, Glenn, and the fact that you do those things and you don't take no for an answer and you keep going and you keep trying and, no is not the correct answer. There isn't a no. And
the beginning of the conversation from him.
But those, that's an example that I think of why you've been so successful. And I think, the things that you've done now that with the success that you've had with your companies, but also, the TV show you did and, Undercover Billionaire, was that what it was called, right? Yeah. And I enjoyed watching that too, but to be able to do that, put yourself there and show how they can be done. And I think that was a great example of what it takes and the ingenuity that you showed during that and how to get things done and keep taking those steps. So that's why, I respect the hell out of both you guys so much and fun to always talk to you and hear those different stories that we've had.
I know we're kind of wrapping, but I have one last little funny story that I want to bring up just because you said about the hardest hits or whatever in there. You and I and Mindy and Paige went to some big event and we were leaving it and it was so crowded that we jumped into a cab.
Oh.
And you're in the back seat behind me. Mindy's in the middle and Paige is on the end. And when I get in, the guy's wearing a Pittsburgh Steeler jacket. And I go, quick,
Such a great
top
video.
3 quarterbacks of all time. And he has no idea you're in the back. And I'm thinking he's gonna, you know, mention some Pittsburgh Steelers and
Harry
he's gonna say some
Bradshaw or
stuff.
Ben
And then
Roethlisberger.
and I'm gonna laugh, and go, ha, you didn't pick this guy in the back. And he goes, top 3 quarterbacks. Number 1, I gotta say John Elway. And we went, oh man,
That
that's
was
it.
such a
And
great
so
moment.
Mindy and I pick up our phone and we start recording and I say, okay, let's start over again. Top 3 quarterbacks. I gotta say number 1, John Elway. And then he'd go, man, I remember one time so-and-so hit him so hard. And Mindy would turn the camera to you and you go, oh, that hurt.
Yeah, I
And
remember
then
that.
you would
He
comment
still had no
off of
clue he was
everything.
in the back. That was the
and
best.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
the greatest.
It was-
Sam Snow. He was
Sam
a
Snow.
Philadelphia taxi driver.
And
Oh yeah,
you
he
know,
was
it
the
was
best.
so wonderful. And he's like, the cab rides for free. I just want a picture. You gave him a very, very nice tip. I remember it wasn't for free. And but we flew to somewhere because we left that night. And then the next morning, I get off the plane and my phone is going crazy. What's
God,
going on?
John, I still
There was
apologize.
like 5 million hits on my Facebook from
Oh.
your video that went viral and went everywhere. And what a just
That was
a
true.
really cool
Really
little
was.
little thing. But anyway, it was amazing.
Okay,
We won't go
that's
there,
a
but yeah.
great story. Yeah, we won't go to the other part of that story. Oh, geez.
Lots of
Thank
good
you
stuff.
for forgiving me.
Oh yeah.
We'll
No,
talk
that
about
was,
another podcast.
Yeah.
we've
So
had some
we
fun trips back there.
are so grateful you took the time out of your day. Thank you for joining us before, after, or during the golf game. Whenever we can get you, we love having you on board. I appreciate you being part of this. The stories that
Wow.
Glenn writes, there's some great ones. You've heard them all. You've heard all of them, and then some. And probably there might be a few that you don't. But
But
you
I,
just
I'm just encouraging people to read the book, Glenn, because you've had such a great life. Both of you together have had such a great life, and the things that you've done, the things you've done for people, and the important things that you've done that are just, truly an inspiration. And I think that I'm glad that I wrote a book too, and writing a book is a heck of a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of memory jogging to try to remember everything, because there's a lot of thing up there. So you have to, get that memory jog, and it takes a lot of time. But I think that, your book is going to do a lot of good for a lot of people. I think it'll be an inspiration for a lot of people because of the successes that you've had and the way that you've done it. And that's with putting people first, and then everything else falls in line after that. And so, congratulations on your book, and I'm sure it'll be a great one.
Aside from you both
Amen.
now being man of great character, you can both call yourself authors.
There you go.
There's something you both
Hey.
John and Glenn have done in
We're
common
authors.
is they're authors.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
John, thank you so much for joining us today.
My
That's-
pleasure. Thank you for having me on. It was great to see you. Even though we got to get together here soon, it's great to see you on the computer right here, and miss you guys a lot, and look forward to
Yeah,
the next
me
time we
too.
get together. We'll get it done soon. And hopefully it's got to definitely before we go on a hunting trip. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah,
know.
that or golfing. If you need
That
a good
too.
caddy, I hear he's
Oh, yeah,
nasty
Oh, I know. That's
sometimes.
that's
Yeah.
another great. Oh, that's another great story. Is the fact. We have time to tell that story?
Yeah.
Throw that one in there.
Well, yeah, we went. It was like an American team against a French team over there. It was right during the Ryder Cup, and we went over to Monaco, and we were over in
Mhm.
Monaco, and I asked Glenn to be my caddy. And you were just getting done with chemo, but you had a tube.
Oh gosh,
Right?
that was right after. That was like 2018, right after he had surgery. Just had his epiglottis removed, so he was on the
Right.
feeding tube,
And I'm like, Glenn, you don't, no way, you don't need to come. He goes, I'm absolutely coming. So when it comes down to grit, when that
Hang
is
on, that's not what happened, John.
absolutely the
No,
part of
I'm
this
gonna-
title. And I mean, he had a tube, and he had to take medicine the whole time, and
he was
thank
on
God for
morphine.
the card. But he could barely move around. He says, I need to sit. And I'm going, Glenn. And I was terrified that he was even there, but he was saying, I'm coming, and I committed to it. And so,
But you almost didn't go. You
No.
came. Remember, you called ahead of time. You're like,
No,
no, we're not going to do that to him.
No.
I'm not doing
Right.
that to my buddy. I'm not doing that.
Exactly.
no. What you said, which again shows your character. You said, I'm not going. I
right.
said, what do you mean? You go, if my caddy can't go, I'm not going. I go, John, you're going. No,
Well-
I go, then I go, look, I'm going. Even if you don't go, I'll be a caddy with
Prince
no
Albert.
player.
I
I
know,
go.
and I mean, I could not believe it, and he felt. And Glenn, you did not feel well at all. You didn't feel good at all. You
I
just
was
getting
on
well
morphine. I
back.
lost your
Yes.
Rangefinder.
rangefinder. I
your
lost
sock.
Oh,
the
and then he's like,
thing. That was the worst caddy
and then
ever.
he was so worried about the range. I said, "Don't worry about the range, finder." And then we lost the cover to my putter, and I'm like, we get done playing, and I'm like, "Where's Glenn?" And I'm worried about where'd Glenn go. Next thing I know, he comes out of the pro shop with a new putter cover for my putter because he lost the putter cover, and I'm like, "You're crazy, you're nuts."
So, well, and then of course I've got a great picture. Maybe we'll share it. I don't know, but you shared your martini in my
Feeding too. We were like, let's get him hammered.
I know, but that was.
You have a lot of
You
shenanigans.
talk about, when there's anything that's called grit, that was grit. That you went above and
That was
beyond.
brutal.
But there's anything called friendship. You were ready to give up that, and I
Absolutely,
appreciate it.
yeah.
I wasn't.
And I still kind of feel bad we went because I know you didn't feel well.
Hey, life is about stories, John.
He's in a
That's
good
It's about
spot.
stories. Let's keep
And
That's
there's
true.
a
That's-
link
stories
that-
coming.
here, so please download or buy the book. We appreciate that, John. Thank you for coming on today. You are just a gem. Love to Paige and the family and the pups. We love the
Thank
pups.
you, you too, and we
Oh.
we'll hope to get together soon for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, you've been listening to another episode of Grit Happens.
Happens.
Please join us, subscribe, and we'll see you next time right here. Thanks again, John.
Thanks, John.
Bye.